Good afternoon, Cecil. Hello, lovely to see you. How are you? As an individual, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good, if I'm honest. Yeah, I mean, we're all getting used to doing things a bit differently, but right now I'm very good. Thank you for asking. I hope you're well too.
I am. Thank you for asking. And though there is almost that fear when you're doing too well and you know other people are going through awful situations, you almost feel a bit of guilt about it, don't you? It is quite difficult.
Well, I don't want to go off on a hobby horse here, but it's a funny old cultural thing we have where we now say, "How are you?" cheerily to everybody, but hardly anybody ever tells you the truth. Now, there's a difference between social courtesy and an appropriate time to say how you are, but I think more of us should tell people in the right
Yeah.
circumstances actually how they really are, and not just the glib. I'm fine. Yeah.
And that's the thing, isn't it? It's the word fine. Just, oh yes, fine. What does that even mean? No, I think you're absolutely right. I think sharing and potentially showing a bit of vulnerability isn't a bad thing, because it is, how are you? The phrase is actually asking you how you are. It isn't just a social convention. Otherwise you just say hello. So I'm very pleased to know that genuinely you're doing well.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of maybe the little positives that have come out of the whole COVID thing. Again, my experience and what I see more people, strangers, engaging because we've got this common cause that we're trying to work around. And whether it be queuing or when we were in lockdown proper, out walking, I mean, I know I met all sorts of people that I wouldn't normally meet. And the level of engagement was more than just that perfunctory, how are you, or whatever. And I think that will last, which is good. When our news is so gloomy and pessimistic, I think we need to, latch on to some of the positives.
I agree. I mean, there have been some things that have come out of this that I think it would be good to last. And my experience has been the same, in that I live in a lovely area, got lovely neighbours, but now we talk far more about in-depth things as opposed to, weather's nice type thing. But
Yeah.
also, I realise how much I enjoy just that ordinary human contact. So even if you don't have an in-depth conversation with someone, if you're walking through a park, you make eye contact and just smile and say good morning. In the times when we couldn't do that, I really missed it. I really
Yeah.
missed it. I think that by nature we are all such social animals, I understand why all the decisions were made that were made, but I've not had a hug from anybody since March, and I don't think I'm a particularly tactile person, but that is something that I think we all miss. And a lot of the people who you deal with at Julian House have got another level of difficulties within their lives. How was it for you during the main bit of the pandemic, and what are your plans now?
Well, it was tough. I mean, we had some really uh, exceptional challenges and some not so obvious ones as well. I mean, the biggest one at the start was getting all the rough sleepers in, because they were at particular risk where they were, and they certainly couldn't. You can't self-isolate on the streets, and that was a big challenge. And I have to say, the level of support from Bath and North East Somerset Council, and then the interagency work amongst the key agencies like DHI and Genesis was just fantastic. And unless that had happened, I mean, again, it almost sounds a bit cheesy, but it's just a fact. We just had a mission and we just made it happen, and it was great. And so to generate over 40 extra bed spaces at amazingly short notice, and was a Herculean effort, and great for the clients concerned. And even though there was necessary paperwork, it was kept to a minimum. And then once we'd signed the necessary paperwork, it was less than, we were in the building putting clients in within 24 hours.
Wow.
And I know that I met a very senior person from the council down there with his shirt sleeves rolled up, making it happen. So he left his comfy office because he knew what was required.
That is just amazing. And as you say, again, another good thing that's come from the pandemic, which obviously has been awful, is the amount of cross-agency and cross-people work to make stuff just happen. But that you should all feel incredibly, incredibly proud of yourselves. Did you have any pushback from any of the rough sleepers who didn't want to come to you, or were you okay?
No, not absolutely everyone came in for particular reasons, but the vast majority did. And again, the learning of that, because we didn't know. I mean, our outreach team were out there talking, whatever, but they were doing what they were doing, but we weren't quite aware of how much they were soaking up from all the other news that was around and whatever. And they were remarkably well informed, and they appreciated the big effort that was being done. And one of the fantastic positives that came out of that, ordinarily, as we all know, that there is a level of rough sleeping here and elsewhere, and irrespective of how good your outreach team is, there's a limit to what they can do on short outreach conversations and whatever. The great thing about having so many of our most vulnerable clients in was that they were then in a stable position. We could then be seeing them on a daily basis, and so the process of understanding their needs and then trying to identify solutions, instead of being this long, was telescoped right down. And so it was just great. And not that I spent much time in the emergency extra accommodation, but I had to go up one day to talk to a client about something. And quite spontaneously, he said how fantastic it was and how appreciative it was. And my service delivery colleague was there, and she said, well, look, and just, we're having conversations that we possibly would never have had. So again, a really big positive. And at the moment, all the indicators are that accommodation is going to be sustained for a while. There's no question of pushing those former rough sleepers out onto the street, which again and that's credit both to the local authority and to central government.
Good, because that was going to be one of my questions. The worst thing that could happen is to try and give people a taste of how it could be, but then take it away, especially because we're going into winter, which I'm guessing brings its own set of challenges for you. So what are you perceiving going to happen over the next 2 to 3 months, insofar as any of us can, not knowing how the pandemic's going to operate?
Well, we will do all that we do normally. I mean, there is a particular challenge around providing extra, because rough sleeper numbers have crept up again. And there is going to be a particular challenge around providing extra space during the very coldest periods. There is a thing called SWEP, which has worked in the past, the severe weather emergency protocol, where if the temperature drops below 0 for 3 successive nights, then extra provision is made. Now that normally is in an open dormitory, and that's not great for COVID. So things like that are going to provide fresh challenges for us.
And I have every confidence that you and your team is up for the challenge.
Well, I mean, you'd expect me to be supportive, but genuinely, I can say it is humbling what they have done. They haven't just run the extra mile; they've run the extra marathon in all of this. And on top of that, the way that the public have stepped forward, because again, we had unusual things to contend with. It's a dim, distant past now, but you know, there was a time when PPE was in really short supply. It's like sanitizer. Well, A, it was really hard to get hold of, and B, the price had rocketed. And it's just interesting, the power of social media, because we put a message out, and actually a firm in Hertfordshire stepped up and gave us the equivalent of 55 litres of sanitizer. Now that's Hertfordshire. It's not that the people in Baines didn't respond, but it was just interesting that that's kind of what, from way over there, bang came the support. And in fact, we got sanitizer from, and even now I don't know where, but people with the connections, they heard our cry, they used their connections, and they brought us that equipment. And organisations, and I have to give a good mention to organisations like Roper Roads, who are clearly big local business, but hard affected by COVID. And because of all their expertise in the imports market,
Yeah.
they have connections in China, and some of their staff got together. They did some crowdfunding, they raised some money, and they got thousands of pounds worth of PPE in, which was distributed then to organisations like us. So again, just clever and targeted support in kind. And that's something I'll come back to a little later in our conversation.
And that's the thing, isn't it? It is, I think you used the word humbling, and it genuinely is, isn't it? It genuinely is, when you look at the fact that so many people have gone, what was your phrase, the extra marathon,
Yeah.
in order to make this stuff happen. And, you know, have you got the sun in your eyes? Am I blinding you, Cecil?
No, it's not you. It's here. It's quite sunny. Forgive me. I'm going to interrupt. I'm going to just drop the blind because it's bad. I'm sorry.
It's fine as long as you're comfortable. Yeah. And one of the things I was going to ask you is, as we sit here now, what are your wants and needs, and how can the public best support you if that's what they want to do?
Well, look, I'm going to be really genuine. The number one thing we need is financial support. A number of our fundraising events and activities have had to be cancelled or postponed, and we rely heavily on the public's financial support to fund some of our key services. So please, our Christmas appeal is starting soon, so we really would ask people to dig as deep as they can and help us. Ordinarily, support in kind, and I'm sorry if that's a bit jargony, but financial help is the number one thing that we need. But ordinarily, individuals and organisations can help us by giving things that they don't want or surplus to requirement, and that's great. So that's ordinarily. Right now, we've got some really particular issues in that the space that we would traditionally store those things is not available anymore. We're having to social distance our offices. We've got staff working remotely. So we don't, storage has always been a problem, but it's a really big problem now. So if anyone is thinking about giving us support in kind, I really would plead with them to give us a call first and let us know what they're thinking about. And it could well be that rather than giving us food from Sainsbury's, it would actually be much better to give us vouchers for Sainsbury's, because they're more flexible. We can buy exactly what we need for our clients, and the storage problem isn't there. So, and funny enough, I suspect that's the same for a lot of good causes. And the other little thing that unintended consequence of all this is, my fundraising colleagues are just not here anymore. They're dispersed and working from home, and so we can't run around picking up things and delivering things. So yeah, COVID has got a lot to answer for. We're having to do things very differently, and volunteers. In the past, volunteers have been very great help to us, but because of space limitations in, for instance, the hostel kitchen, we just can't make use of our volunteers like they used to. But in our charity shops, we'd love to have more volunteer support, because some of our volunteers in the charity shops are a bit older, and some of them are still nervous to come out or have health conditions that prevent them. So we're short of volunteers in our shops as well. So there are some special needs that we've got at this time.
So money, vouchers, volunteers.
For our charity shops, that's right.
in the chat for the charity shops. Are your charity shops? I know some charity shops had to stop taking things because a lot of people spent their time during lockdown clearing out their loft. Are your charity shops accepting things at the moment?
We are generally we're trying to steer people towards certain days,
Right.
just so that we can, because again, we have to quarantine the stock for 48 hours once it comes in, and we have to manage that quite carefully. So by having set days, then we can make sure we've got cleared space, and that's working. But again, donations, we love the charity shops make a big contribution to the charity's work, and so we need those donations to carry on. And again, here again during the lockdown, we did a shout out for donations, and it worked really well, in fact too well, and our friends at the Percy Centre let us use the hall to store that, A, to quarantine it, and B, so that we could sort it and get it ready to go out to the shops.
Yeah, that's amazing. As you were saying before about storage, I guess that that is quite an issue if suddenly you get a whole heap of unexpected stuff donated. So again, and where would people find this information, Cecil?
Go on our website, the charity shop numbers are on there, and they just give the shops a call. And of course, we want them to come out and visit our shops.
Yeah. Yeah, oh, absolutely. Well, I think Footfall, I chatted to, you may know Alison Herbert, who runs Bathbid. Chatted to her a couple of weeks ago, and Footfall is picking up. So hopefully, you know, people are popping into your shops at the same time as they go into the local butcher, baker, or wherever they need to go. Is there anything else that you'd like to take to the people of Bath, who I hope are going to be watching this, at the moment, about what you've done or what the challenges are or what you would like from them?
Well, it's a general point. If they do see someone out on the streets and they're concerned about them, do contact us, and we'll try and make sure that we can give them support. But also is say hello to that person. And although we are absolutely against begging, and we would encourage anyone who is if they want to give money to someone they see on the street, far better that they go to the contactless donation point that's out on the Nationwide Building Society, and that way they know that money will go to, because that money is shared amongst the agencies who are giving direct support to rough sleepers. But back to the point about it's about talking to people on the street, getting an understanding, because one of the cries that I hear now and again from the clients, their lives are tough, their lives are difficult, but it's really hurtful to be ignored on the streets. And this is a common theme where we're trying to get across to people that the people we support are just ordinary individuals like the rest of us. They just happen to be in a tough place, and so that lack of being blanked out, it would hurt any of us. It would hurt you, hurt me. Actually, it would hurt a homeless person as well. So to be just eyes forward, don't look, they're not going to bite. And actually, if you say hello to them, I'd be really surprised if they don't say hello back.
It's what we were saying right at the beginning of our conversation, isn't it? That need for just an ordinary human connection is deep within all of us. And as you say, you know, people who currently are in a position where they're rough sleeping are no different from anybody else. I don't actually give money as I go by. I worked with you in the past, and we did a Killing with Kindness thing, and we bought vouchers. But I do buy stuff that I know people want. So I won't just assume that someone wants a sandwich. I'll say, I'm just about to go into the local McColl's. Would you like a hot drink? Would you like a sandwich? If it's a sandwich, what would you like? And because that's the other element that I feel, people are people, and they want to have some choice and some control over their lives, rather than have someone say, oh, I've bought you this, there you go. Because that's almost too much me saying I'm being charitable to you, as opposed to saying we're equals, we're currently in a different position, I can help you out, what is it you want from me? And have that conversation. Because you're right, what could be worse than to be so down on your luck and then feel that people are treating you not like they treat any other human being?
Absolutely. And generally now, awareness of the issues which impact on our clients is much, much better. And so hearing the expression, well, why should we help them? You know, they've chosen this lifestyle. You just don't hear that being aired very often anymore. But there are some people who still think that. And to which I always say, well, look, no one chooses to have a mental health problem. No one sets out to become addicted either to alcohol or Class A drugs. And there is a huge difference between getting used to a lifestyle and wanting to be there. So if people can remember that, and I hope that doesn't come across as very preachy, but it's just it's a basic fact.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. I hope this isn't going to embarrass you, Cecil, but I do want to say, and it is one of the pleasures and privileges I get in my year as being Math, that I can talk on behalf of the City of Bath. Can't thank you and your team enough for the work that you did, and I know you'll say you did it with other agencies, and that's completely correct, to give them some credit as well. But you were the lead on a lot of the things that we had to achieve, as you say, in a terribly, terribly short time scale, to make sure that some of the most vulnerable people in our society were well looked after. So on behalf of the City of Bath, you get my heartfelt thanks for what you've done and what you're continuing to do.
Well, it's really kind of you to say so, and I will pass on your good wishes to my colleagues. That they don't seek praise, but when it's acknowledged, it's appreciated.
And that's one of the, yes, you don't go around sort of shouting about it, but I don't want you to think it's not noticed either. And if there's anything as the mayoralty we can do, I don't want to volunteer to come along and do something if that's then going to give you more of a problem, because you've then got to work out social distancing or whatever. But if there is anything that we can do to help and support, then you will get our help and support.
Well, thank you. I will log that, and it could well be, yeah, it could well be, if the time was right, that maybe, although it's limited access, it could well be maybe popping into the hostel and just saying hello to the clients would be a big help.
Yeah, no, as long as we can still do it within the guidelines, because they seem to change, and everyone feels safe doing it. I wouldn't want to do it if people thought, well, who's this woman coming in? Heaven knows who she's been talking with. You know, I don't want people to feel unsafe, but if it's something that enhances your offer, then the offer is there.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that brings us to the end of